The 2007 feature-length film adaptation of The Mist is fairly enjoyable for the most part. It sticks to the original story a great deal of the time, but is also one of the few examples of a King adaptation that, when it does go off-book, manages to improve on the foundation King has laid. The movie includes the shady government entity from King's story known only as Project Arrowhead and the otherworldly havoc the project is responsible for. But the most memorable, impactful part of the movie is the way it ends, as the conclusion packs a truly devastating punch that even King's original story doesn't come close to. Hi there, I'm your host, Mr. Baldy McBalderson, and this is A Great Undertaking. If you like Stephen King, scary books and movies, and grown men screaming uselessly into the YouTube void, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Quick life update before we get started. My wife's surgery was successful, and while she is still recovering, she no longer has cancer cells in her body. I know I've been vague about what's been going on in previous videos, but my wife had to have a hysterectomy after 2.5 years of uncertainty and surgeries and biopsies and cone biopsies with no promising results. It was the only solution left, but it worked. And while we're not entirely out of the woods yet, she is at present cancer-free. To say we are relieved would be a gross understatement. Also, my daughter has made a full recovery from COVID and is back to being her insane, vivacious self. I want to thank all of you wonderful people who sent well wishes and good vibes our way. It meant a lot, and I appreciate your camaraderie and support more than you'll ever know. And for anyone curious as to why I shaved my head, you've never seen the back of my head before, but trust me when I say it was a barren wasteland that even the most strategic of comb-overs could no longer conceal. Anyway, this is the second video in my series for The Mist. Last week I discussed the short story from the Skeleton Crew collection and mostly focused on how the protagonist Dave was just an obnoxiously horny freak whose sexual appetite wouldn't be deterred no matter the circumstances. And today I'll be focusing on the 2007 movie adaptation of The Mist, which was pretty damn good and is thankfully free of the terribly out-of-place sex stuff. And next week I'll be taking a look at the ill-fated TV series adaptation that was unceremoniously canceled after one season to the disappointment of seemingly no one. But before we get into Project Arrowhead, wacky government conspiracies, and what sorts of hijinks the most well-funded military force in the history may or may not be getting up to, let's take a minute to discuss the events that led up to the making of the film and the details of the film itself. History and background. The screenplay for The Mist was written by Frank Darabont, who also directed the film. At this point in his career, Darabont had already directed 2 critically acclaimed Stephen King adaptations, both The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile. However, Darabont wanted an opportunity to return to his horror roots, and having already developed a working relationship with King, Darabont decided he wanted to take a stab at The Mist, a story he had considered adapting for over 25 years by the time the production came to fruition. Darabont recruited a regular who's who of horror icons to assist in developing and bringing the creatures from The Mist to life. Most notably were notorious makeup effects artist Greg Nicotero and legendary illustrator Bernie Wrightson. Wrightson, Nicotero, and Darabont worked collaboratively for 2 months to design and craft the monsters, which weren't described in great detail in the original story. So, while they had a vague idea of what they were going for, they were reliant on their imaginations and talents to elaborate on the limited details from the story. The creature effects we see in the film are a combination of puppetry, robotics, and CGI, and while the computer effects don't necessarily hold up to modern standards, they were pretty damned impressive for the time and still mostly enjoyable in 2022. The makeup and gory practical effects, on the other hand, have aged well and are disgustingly gruesome. That's of course no surprise, however, considering Greg Nicotero's track record and filmography. The film was shot in a documentary style, foregoing the newer digital technology of the day, and instead using older film cameras to capture the grainy, gritty vibes Darabont was aiming for. Rather than intricately laying out every scene shot for shot, the cameramen improvised a great deal and interacted with the actors on set in a guerrilla filming style. While Darabont admits this decision was in part due to budgetary and time constraints, the approach gives things a fast-paced, erratic feel at times that definitely complements the overall tone of the movie. The cast included Thomas Jane as lead protagonist David Drayton. Jane does a decent job in the role. He's no Zac Efron, but he gets the job done. Other notable cast members include Marcia Gay Harden as the lunatic religious whack job Mrs. Carmody, Andre Braugher as Brent Norton, who is David's asshole neighbor, and Laurie Holden as Amanda Dunphy, ally to and thankfully not end of days sex partner to David. And we have William Sadler as redneck hayseed, sometimes antagonist, sometimes ally, Jim Grondin. I remember Sadler most fondly from his role in the Tales from the Crypt movie Demon Knight. Sadler is a great actor and reliably solid in his role. But if I had to pick a favorite from the cast, it would be Toby Jones, who plays assistant grocery store manager Ollie Weeks. Ollie is a nice guy who everyone thinks is just some weak pushover, but he handles his business like an absolute f***ing boss. I love a good underdog turned badass character, and I found myself rooting more enthusiastically for Jones, regardless of who the central protagonist was supposed to be. Darabont chose to keep the soundtrack and score minimal and non-invasive, and composer Mark Isham certainly delivered what was asked of him. In regards to the score, Darabont stated, quote, "I've always felt that silent can be scarier than loud, a whisper more frightening than a bang," unquote. And upon reading this statement, I had two realizations. One, I had at no point during the movie noticed the score or soundtrack, and two, I had at no point felt that something was missing, regardless of the subtlety of the score. Even when the score does go harder, there is rarely anything resembling a melody, and it's almost entirely reliant on percussion and rhythmic intensity when it needs to push the mood from brooding and ominous into severe and desperate. The entire album is available on Spotify, and I plan to use it for Halloween this year to spook trick-or-treaters. While the score may not be a work of technical instrumental mastery or a showcase of proficient musicianship, it's definitely a vibe. So yeah, the majority of the acting is good, the creature and makeup effects and overall special effects are enjoyable, the filming style is unconventional yet effective, and the music is subtle yet impactful. It's a well-rounded film, and while it leaves something to be desired that I can't quite put my finger on, The Mist is a welcome reprieve from the cavalcade of subpar King movies I've been subjecting myself to over the last 2 years. There are a handful of extra features and interviews from the 2-disc DVD release that have found their way onto YouTube, including a joint interview with King and Darabont. I've left links to all of those special features in the description below, and I highly recommend checking them out before you watch or rewatch the movie for a fuller appreciation of Darabont's overall vision. Project Arrowhead. In King's story, we are led to believe that the mysterious mist and its horrific inhabitants materialized as the result of an incident which occurred at a nearby military compound known to the locals as Project Arrowhead. For the most part, it's speculative, though. We never know for sure, but it is implied that the severe storm caused something catastrophic at the base, which led to the apocalyptic circumstances. The movie, however, leaves nothing to the imagination, and it is confirmed that the operators of Project Arrowhead were experimenting with some sort of interdimensional exploration, and the storm somehow caused a portal to remain open, allowing all variety of bizarre native species of some alternate plane of existence to enter our world. Project Arrowhead and the nature of its top-secret experiments immediately brought to mind facilities like Area 51 and how the classified contents of such military bases leaves us to speculate in regards to just what it is the government is up to in there. I mean, when you consider the resources and power of the military and intelligence arms of the United States, it's not unreasonable to assume they are secretly working on any variety of interplanetary or interdimensional exploits. The U.S. military budget grows by billions of dollars every year. Last year, that number was $801 billion, a number I can't even begin to rationalize or comprehend. And while a great deal of those hundreds of billions is used to feed the appetite of the ever-expanding military-industrial complex and to wage endless wars in foreign nations and to overturn democratically elected governments and to just impose freedom to every corner of the globe, which, having said that aloud, I now realize that globes don't have corners. One can't help but imagine that with the power and the finances available to them, the U.S. military is likely getting up to some serious shenanigans, the likes of which everyday civilians couldn't begin to fathom. We all know the rumors about Area 51 being some sort of alien research facility. The top secret base supposedly houses the remains of a spaceman and his ship that crashed to Earth in the Nevada desert. Some believe that Area 51 holds within it the truth of long-kept interplanetary space secrets or any number of unfounded but not entirely unbelievable conspiracy theories. And as someone who doesn't know what he believes about much of anything these days and has a healthy distrust of government intelligence agencies in general, I can't help but wonder what does go on behind the closed doors of such facilities. However, when you start looking into it and trying to find any semblance of truth, the waters can get muddy in a hurry, especially in the age of the internet when anyone can say or proclaim anything they want about any particular topic. And that's the culmination of factors that make something like Project Arrowhead and their poking around in interdimensional portals seem feasible. I'm in anything's possible, what the do I know kind of guy. And if history tells us anything, and regardless of how far-fetched some of the conspiracy theories can be, it's that you can bet your ass the United States military is doing some wild shit when removed from the public eye. I mean, under the umbrella of the classified designation, with the largest funding source known to mankind, and as a result, an endless pool of resources to pull from. If any entity is capable of ripping a hole in time and space and inadvertently allowing a parade of carnivorous murder monsters to invade the planet, it's the reliably sketchy military arm of the good old US of A. The most devastating ending to a King movie ever? I'm going to keep this section brief and vague for anyone who hasn't seen the movie, but suffice it to say, this was easily, hands down, unquestionably, the most unexpected, horrifying, completely devastating ending to any King movie I have ever seen. Maybe of any movie I've ever seen, period. In the short story, King leaves things open-ended. The fates of our last surviving heroes are left to our imaginations. It's a bit anticlimactic, but not entirely unsatisfying, and though the characters aren't out of the woods by any means, there is the faintest glimmer of hope when the story concludes. The ending Darabont wrote for the movie, on the other hand, provides a powerful, just devastating final scene that left me completely blown away. I mean, I was shook. The feelings and emotions I felt were so intense, and frankly, it was awesome. This is not the ending you expect, and is certainly not an ending most studios would allow to make the final cut, but holy shit, what an absolute shocking mind-fuck ending. If you haven't seen this movie, you need to watch it, even if just for the ending alone. However, I recommend you make sure you're in a relatively positive state of mind, or the last 10 minutes of this movie will ruin your life. Final thoughts. Hats off to Frank Darabont for this one. I go into every King adaptation with a healthy dose of apprehension, so when a movie goes this hard and makes so many good choices, I feel almost elated. But this movie was such an action-packed thrill ride that ends with a resounding bang. You have to watch it. And if you've seen this one but haven't watched it in 15 years like me, it's worth revisiting. That ending, though, I've been thinking about it for days. Just wow. Next week, I'll be taking a look at the 2017 TV series adaptation of The Mist, which I watched when it was originally debuting, but I remember nothing, and I mean nothing about it. That doesn't seem like a good sign, but it could also be memory loss as a result of the things I was doing during my turbulent teenage years and during my early 20s and possibly into my mid-20s as well. But I'm pretty sure the show just wasn't very good. I guess we'll see. New videos drop on this channel every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so click the subscriber bell to get notifications. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week, okay? Goodbye. Be sure to click like and subscribe to the channel for my continued analysis of all things Stephen King, pretty pleased with blood and guts on top. My name is Mr. Doyle, and this has been a great undertaking.